Meeting will come to order. We are televised this morning, so we want to keep to their record as well as ours. And I know that some of the testifiers on the bill have a schedule issue that they have to reach. So we'll get going, and members will gradually be coming in. So this morning we are taking a look at two programs where on a spreadsheet you see a title and an amount, but you don't necessarily know what it does. And so we're going to try to understand this morning what happens to the Early Childhood Learning Center grants and the Library Accessibility and Improvement grants by having the department presentations and also to take a look at bills that are relevant to that area. So we have the Deputy Commissioner of DHS and someone from the Office of Economic Opportunity. And we welcome you to the committee. Please identify yourselves for the record. Are you going first, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Chuck Johnson, Deputy Commissioner for Policy and Operations for the Department of Human Services, and with me is Francie Mathis from our Office of Economic Opportunity. Francie actually administers and runs this program. And I'm going to do a little bit to sort of start us off.
And both of these handouts are yours?
That's correct. So I'm going to walk through this handout of slides first, and then Francie will talk about the other document, which lists the programs we funded. Madam Chair, the Governor has recommended funding for the Early Childhood Learning Facilities grants program of $3 million in his budget for 2014. These are grants that are used to help local entities, usually school districts, but not exclusively, renovate and renew older facilities, usually for early childhood programming within that community. The funds are awarded by a competitive RFP process, so this is not sort of a typical bonding where there are selected facilities that are done and bonded for. The money is provided to the department. We do an RFP process, and then we provide grants out to the entities that score the highest on the RFP. Also a little bit different, all these grants are required to be matched 50% by the local community. And so that, again, is part of how we look at proposals, is communities that are stepping forward, putting some of their own dollars into the investment because of their desire to have better early childhood facilities in their community. And really the goal here is just build capacity at the local level for early childhood programming, to build services that are accessible, to build services that are in clean, modern buildings that meet code and so forth for the youngest children in our state. Slide 3 shows you a map of the facilities or the sites that we funded over the last 20 years. There's been a variety of funding. It comes sort of here and there in fits and starts. We had more funding more regularly in the 90s. Through the last decade or so, it's been a little less regular in terms of when we've gotten funding through the bonding, and Ms. Mathis will talk a little bit more about that. But we have over the last 20 years had about $17 million that's been appropriated and spent a little bit less than that on these facilities. You can see most of them are outside the metro area, although there have been 15 in the metro area, and they're spread pretty well across the state in terms of the distribution of sites. And again, we're largely dependent here on who submits proposals to us. It seems like the metro area, I think, has a little better capacity to do some of this work on its own, has more facilities, more opportunities for partnerships. And in the greater Minnesota, this money tends, I think, to be a little bit more critical to helping create some of those spaces in communities across the state. Just to say a little bit more about the program, this is on slide 4 of my handout. We see an ongoing need to rehabilitate facilities across the state. We're usually getting 3 to 4 times the dollar requests for the money that we have at the times that we put out the RFP for these funds. Clearly there's an interest across the state in getting access to funding to help develop early childhood services in each community. We also see that not only is demand rising, I think over time, certainly over the last 20 years, there's been a great increase in the interest in having early childhood programming in communities, and schools and public entities being more actively involved in the development of those services. But also with the advent of all-day kindergarten from last legislative session has created a certain amount of pressure on space within local school districts, such that school districts are now looking at balancing the need for having the space they need for all-day kindergarten and also continuing to have the space that they need for early childhood programming. As I mentioned, the funding has been pretty sporadic over the last few years. But we are recommending $3 million in the governor's budget for this year, and then are also looking in the planning years for 16 and 18 of also having another $3 million. We think it's important to have this funding regularized, put on a schedule, so that we can have regular investments in developing our capacity at the local level for early childhood facilities. Madam Chair, I would take any questions. I could turn over to Ms. Mathis. We can, depending on what the committee is interested in doing.
Well, on this one, Mr. Johnson, on the map, it's always helpful for us to see that this money really does go statewide, that it's broadly spread. I wonder, though, as you evaluate the RFPs, do you look at the long-term sustainability of a center that we help to build, that we know that there's sufficient population base, that there's sufficient local support of that center for long-term sustainability?
Madam Chair, I think I'm going to ask Ms. Mathis to address that question.
Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record. And we have one question to him first, or do you want to hear her answer first?
I can wait.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
No, I can wait. I can wait.
Francie Mathis, Department of Human Services. Madam Chair, I forgot what the question was.
We're always pleased to see a map that shows the broad range. What I'm wondering about is, as you evaluate the RFPs, do you look for long-term sustainability? If we're all sharing in the cost, we hope that, of course, those centers have both the population base and the ongoing funding to actually stay open. And I wonder how that's evaluated.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The RFP does ask the applicants to address those issues. In addition, as Mr. Johnson said, there is a dollar-for-dollar match, so the school districts themselves have to match that funding. So there is an interest in the area. These also have a high level of collaboration, which is also part of the expectation in the statute and in the RFP. So generally it is the school district programs, maybe a child care center, and a Head Start program. So it is a large collaboration, so many groups to come together to do that planning and to do the project.
We have questions, but do you have further content before we go to questions?
Madam Chair, I just was going to have a look at this document that really defines all of the projects since the inception of the programming. If you turn to the last page, is 1992. And our Office of Economic Opportunity has been involved with this program since its inception. So in the early days, there was less funding available, and the cap was lower at $200,000 per project, although, the costs were lower back in 1992 as well. So this will kind of give you an overview of the different kinds of projects that we've had. Generally, they've been renovation projects, but more and more we've had additions or purchasing a building to renovate.
We have two questions. Representative Norton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just noting, Winona State University here was a recent recipient of a grant, and I wonder if that's the one tied to the bonding project that we visited for their education college.
Madam Chair, I don't believe so. This was a small project that renovated some classroom or some space for parenting parenting centers and infant programming in their lab school.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you came to the Health and Human Service Committee, and so I made the point there, and I'm going to make it here, but partly I make it because this ties with a bonding bill that we heard just the other day, a request for kindergarten and early childhood. We seem to have a confluence of different type of programs now coming forward, and we were talking about in the last hearing, the kindergarten schools don't have room to expand to fill all-day kindergarten, and so I had asked that you consider moving ahead, working with these districts who are going to have preschool needs because their preschools are currently in their K-12 buildings. When the kindergarten is going to all day, it's taking up those rooms, and those preschool classrooms are being moved out and being displaced. And so I think there will be a greater need moving ahead in the next few years as schools try to fulfill the all-day kindergarten opportunities that we allowed them here at the legislature. So I look for that, and then I also wondered, because of the other bill we heard the other day on the bonding for these types of classrooms, it says there's a match with other dollars. Could it match with that other state program, or I assume you guys know about each other's requests. Could those be a match to do one project, or do they have to be other types of dollars?
Madam Chair, the match needs to be non-state funds. So typically it's local levy funding or other funding.
To enhance these. And have you, Madam Chair, have you given any more thought, because I really am worried about what's happening to these, the school districts as they're trying to fit all-day kindergarten in, and these preschool rooms are getting pushed out. If you're going to give any preference or thought to those types of projects as opposed to maybe something new or a standalone.
Madam Chair, we will look at the need always. Again, the RFP asks the applicants to address that, and we're well aware, because our office is hearing from many programs, that there is a great need. So we would look at that as well.
And I would think that requirement of the local match is one way that you determine, is there also local effort that's going to keep it going on an ongoing basis? I mean, that would be an early indication, I would think. Representative Mahoney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I've never been accused of being parochial, but it...
Do you not see a certain city here?
Thank you. I'm looking at the map here, and I'm just wondering if you can explain why there's such a desert of triangles in Ramsey County, and I mean, maybe it's that Minneapolis has something that we don't have over in Ramsey County, but and I probably wouldn't have noticed it if it had only been one or two in Hennepin County versus Ramsey County. But I tried to put on my reading glasses. I still can't determine exactly how many of those triangles are in Hennepin County or in Minneapolis. So maybe you can explain why there's nothing in Ramsey County and every place else. Well, I guess I'm kind of thinking, is that Rochester in there too?
No, we were missed, yes.
Yeah, you were missed also. So it's Preston. Preston. Oh, I see.
Madam Chair, this chart just reflects the applications that were received and funded. So I believe there haven't been applications from Ramsey County, or fundable applications at least from Ramsey County. I know that the St. Paul College was putting together a project last year, but then no funding was appropriated last year. So I know there's a viable project there that's in the works. And likewise for Rochester area, that whole kind of southern part of the state, there just haven't been very many applications from that area.
Representative Mahoney.
Madam Chair, are you telling me that Rochester and St. Paul, or Rochester, Olmsted County and Ramsey County didn't put applications in?
It's our self-sufficiency, I think, Representative Mahoney.
Oh.
Sorry.
Maybe you could explain to the committee what a viable project and how it's determined, because that seems rather ridiculous that in the space of 11 years, Ramsey County did not get any applications considered, or a viable application, and multiple other and Olmsted County and multiple other locations did.
Ms. Mathis.
Madam Chair.
21 years.
The applications, I believe the applications never came in. A viable application would be one that has, a collaborative group of people, that has the match, that has a project in the works, and I don't have this just on the top of my head, and I will double check and get back to you, but I don't believe that we've received an application from Ramsey County.
Well,
Now, I'm kind of thinking maybe there's one from the Head Start program, but it was years ago, so I need to double check on that.
Madam Chair, if you would check and see if any Ramsey County applications have been made, and that would be appreciated, and I would like you to get back to me with the number of Ramsey County applications that were made.
Representative Carlson.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I've got two questions. The first one, it's to date been $17 million, and then the governor recommends $3 million. Do we have any idea of what the long-term total costs would be?
Mr. Johnson, do you have that? I heard you say 3 or 4 times the request. Was that your earlier?
Madam Chair, that is the number of requests we usually get relative to the money we have available. I'm not sure what what question Representative Carlson is asking.
Well, Madam Chair, that's what perked my interest, was that's the current request, but I'm looking at it or asking if you look at what the long-term costs are being. For example, if we had given the full request, do you have any estimate as to how much more would be in the pipeline? Just kind of asking what road we're ultimately on until we totally resolve the issue. That's my first question. And if you don't have that information, that's fine. Just say you don't.
And it might be something, if you don't have it today, that might be kind of historical record that you could share.
Madam Chair, I was thinking the same. We could probably look at what our requests have been over the last several cycles and give you a sense of what that demand has looked like. We don't necessarily know what the demand looks like going forward. I think part of what we're anticipating is, having seen there has been demand over the last couple of cycles, that we thought it made sense to put this out there, as I suggested, over the next 3 bonding cycles for $3 million per cycle. Obviously, that can be revisited at any time if we're seeing that demand is dropping off or has been met. We wouldn't expect that to happen. But we can get that information for you just to show what that's looked like over the last couple of cycles.
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, kind of wondering, for future bonding bills, whatever we do this time, what road we're on. My second question is, I look at some of the descriptions here. How do you separate what I'll call normal repair for a building from what is a vital need? And for example, many years ago actually, I carried some legislation involving a center because they needed some help meeting a fire code issue. Clearly that was, a high priority. Otherwise the center would have had to close if they didn't meet the fire code. But I see several things here when you read the descriptions that kind of raise the question, if you will, what would be the normal responsibility of maintaining a building or a center versus preparing it to make sure it meets code and so on, so it can be an early learning center? How do you separate that out?
Ms. Bassett?
Madam Chair, excuse me. In the RFP process, they make the case about it, and the needs of the early childhood space being different than like a first grade room or a fifth grade classroom. So there are some differences in that way. Along the way, certainly they're upgrading the normal wear and tear on the building, but that isn't really the primary reason why we're giving them the funding. The other thing that should be said is that all of these spaces must be licensed by the child care licensing standards, which that had been the kind of prime mover in the beginning about why we needed this, why this funding was initially appropriated, because there wasn't licensable space and the children were down in the lower level of the churches throughout the state. So now moving them up to generally school buildings, but usually it's the older school buildings that the early childhood kids get, and then there is a level of renovation needed to make that appropriate and safe space. In addition, we're hearing also about the safety issues with, with the elementary school shootings and some of that. That's been a new thing that I'm hearing from some of the superintendents around the state, is that some of those buildings are not safe from that perspective.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not arguing about those kinds of examples. I'm not arguing about anything, actually, just trying to figure out how the grants are given. And by the way, I won't be parochial either. I guess he left. I didn't see one certain school district on the list either, but and they do have older buildings. But when I read some of the description, it just kind of jumps out in certain cases where you wonder, well, why isn't that a part of the basic maintenance of a building? I don't remember which one I read, but for example, window replacement. Well, I can understand where you want good windows in the center, and I'm not sure if you're putting windows in the entire building or just where the center is located within the building. But that does raise the question of, and I'm just picking on that as an example of, well, what's the school district or the owner of the building's responsibility as a part of their normal repair and betterment versus what they need to do to meet code and that kind of thing. Because what I mentioned the fire code, what we were attempting to do with that facility that I worked on many years ago was meet code. It went beyond just the fire code, but that was one crucial part of it, meeting the state fire code. But we have limited resources, and so if we're doing more than we need to at certain sites, that means somebody else goes without. That's the reason I'm basically raising the question. Do you do more for many or a lot for fewer kind of question? But thank you.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just following up a little bit more with maybe what Representative Mahoney and Representative Norton were talking about. Now, there's more requests than money available, and there are still a lot of needs out there. But I'm wondering why we do have these holes, why we do have Ramsey County or Olmsted County not making requests. Is it something about the criteria? I can't imagine that it's about awareness. They must be aware that this is available. Do you have any speculation as to why some of these areas aren't making requests?
Would that be Ms. Mathis?
Madam Chair, I believe I don't have any data on that, but I do make an effort to inform all the superintendents about this funding. I think it's a little bit unusual funding that people aren't used to, and maybe they don't have a project ready to go. It also has been sporadically funded, so it's not something you could count on every 2 years. So maybe some of those are the reasons why we have had fewer applications. I was actually surprised last time that we had, I think, fewer applications than I expected.
Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just I believe that this is the program summary that you have. So there's a St. Paul project, so just to clarify to folks that there's a St. Paul project. And I've noticed that some projects seem to have like 10 times the matching funds, and others have like just what those funds are. Can you speak to that? And can you also sort of tell us how much matching funds the $17.4 million have leveraged over the program?
Madam Chair, I don't have that total in my head, but I will get that to you. Some of them that have like a very large match is because the program was part of a larger program. Generally, I just track the amount that is required by law, but if there's a whole bunch more, then I would put that in there.
Representative Green, and then we're going to have to, we've got a schedule conflict for the others, so Representative Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a clarification. I hear, you're asking for $3 million for the next few years, but the bill is talking $10 million, and I'm wondering what I missed.
We'll move on to the bill now, I think, and then they can make their case.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Representative Melin and the testifiers, and I don't know if they all have an urgent issue with schedule or whether we take one before another. Or so we have House File 2638, the bill's author, and 3 testifiers. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. And we just heard a good overview from the Department of Human Services on what the program is and what the needs are. And as we heard, the governor has recommended $3 million in his bill for early childhood learning centers. And we set our sights a little bit higher, and we're putting in a request for $10 million. Due in part to a lot of what we heard, where the applications far exceed the money available, and that the need is out there. And, another reason, as the department raised and Representative Norton pointed out, with expanding all-day kindergarten, a lot of the spaces that these facilities were renting in schools are now taken up by all-day kindergarten, and they're having to find new space. But I think when we're looking for new space to educate kids, that's always a good thing. So I'm happy to come here with the proposal for $10 million for the early childhood facilities. And I have 3 testifiers here with me today, Madam Chair.
And is this Gail Kelly?
It is. Thank you.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Gail Kelly. I'm the Executive Director for the Minnesota Head Start Association, and I live in Duluth. The Head Start Association is carrying the early childhood facilities bonding bill this year, largely and due to the fact that we just are desperate for quality facilities to do early childhood services. And across Minnesota, as you've already heard, the expansion of all-day kindergarten has created opportunities for us to move out of facilities that we had been partners with for a long time. So this summer, as we gathered a retreat of the Head Start programs, we were astonished about how many programs were being told that they would have to find new space. And quality space that you really can provide quality services is hard to come by. So we have been working with our partners across the state, and we, in a matter of a few months, generated a list of over $10 million in projects that were getting ready or shovel ready already. And so we asked that we come to this committee with a request for $10 million with a cap of $1 million on each project. Now that we've chosen $1 million cap because we want to guarantee to this committee at least 10 viable projects over the next year. And we are really committed to helping the committee identify where additional projects are coming for the future, because as the governor has indicated, a continued investment in this. We see that this is just the tip of the iceberg of what will be coming out in the near future as we invest in early learning scholarships and all-day kindergarten. So we have many collaborative partners. Again, most of these projects are in partnership with either cities, well, they're all in partnership with government entities, but many in school districts, school district buildings, city buildings, and community entities. And they are, I just want to say, they are community development projects. Those facilities, sometimes we do such a good job of developing them that we're asked to leave the facility that we helped develop. But we always see that as staying in the community, being a part of what's facilities for early childhood. So we're proud of the collaborations that we made. And we've asked 2 members of the community to come and talk about their projects today. We have the Virginia Schools and the Arrowhead Economic Opportunity Head Start, who have a viable project ready to go. So I'll just share my time and then answer questions.
And there are 2 more chairs up there, so if we can move, we can get them to the microphone, and we'll start with Skip Ferris from the Arrowhead Head Start. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Skip Ferris. I am the director of Arrowhead Head Start in northeastern Minnesota and Virginia. And I'm happy to come here today to talk about a project that we've been working on for well, since 2006 for an early childhood system in the city of Virginia. We have worked with a cross-sector in our community. We had various members of our community that sat on a group that worked on a business plan. We put a business plan together in 2009 for early childhood, which included some facility building on there. And since 2009, we continue to refine the plan as things change in early childhood education. Currently, our Head Start classrooms in Virginia are located in a grade 3 to 12 building. They're not even located with the rest of the early childhood programs in Virginia. They're also located in the basement of the building, where the windows are about 6 feet above the heads of the children. While they're nice rooms, they are apart from the other early learning programs. One of our goals is to get all of the early childhood programming in one facility, which is at the Parkview Learning Center. We plan to provide a full-day, full-year, or a full-day preschool program available to all 4-year-olds in our community. So instead of having Head Start doing 40 children for a preschool, we're planning to do up to 140 children in this particular plan. The classrooms would be blended, meaning that they wouldn't just be a Head Start classroom or a school readiness classroom, but they would be blended. However, we would follow all of the Head Start regulations in programming in doing these classrooms. And that would include doing the same curriculums and assessments. So everything would be consistent. The other issue that we have in our current location for Head Start is we have no playground equipment in the outdoors for the children to use at the school. When they play at the school, they're playing on a black-topped surface. The playground equipment at the school is currently not age-appropriate for these kids, so we don't have the kids playing on it. So they have to go 2 blocks away, walk 2 blocks down the street to a facility that, while it's fenced in, is located next to a lake and a halfway house. And so there's always a concern about safety when you're walking with kids on a daily basis out. We do have a shovel-ready plan that we'd like to do in Virginia, and I will turn this over to Mike, and he can explain what we're doing there.
Mike Krebsbach, principal of the Parkview Learning Center, Virginia Public Schools. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you. The Virginia Public Schools has a plan in place right now to add 8 classrooms to our pre-K through grade 2 school, which is the Parkview Learning Center. We plan to start construction on our project in the spring of 2015, adding the 8 rooms along with some other school remodeling to accommodate the everyday, all-day 4-year-old school readiness program, combining with Skip's Head Start program. The funding of this bill would provide Head Start to add 2 more classrooms to our project, which would then allow us to bring the entire Head Start program into the more appropriate Parkview Learning Center. So,
we have a question, Representative Ward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, members, recent statistical information research data has shown that, we've been talking about investing in early childhood down here for my 8 years that I've been here. And, we've done some and sometimes we haven't. But mostly, I think when we make that investment, the recent data shows that, we have changed significantly those kids that are ready for K. I think when I started down here, it was less than 50% of the kids were ready for K. And I think the most recent data says that I think it's in the 70 percentile are ready for K. So that investment is a smart and wise financial investment, like Art Rolnick has said for years and years and years. Ms. Kelly, my question is to you, is I thought I heard you say, and we've got wonderful Head Start and early childhood programs around the state that I was fortunate as an educator to see a lot of them with the classes that I taught, and they do remarkable work. And like I said, it's really making an impact on those kids being ready for K and then going on later to be successful in K through 12. But I thought I heard you say, Ms. Kelly, that you are asked to leave programs that you have set up. What do you mean? I mean, that kind of took my breath away when you said that. Why?
Ms. Kelly.
Madam Chair and members. What happens is that when you work in collaboration in school districts and you remodel a classroom so it fits early childhood, sometimes the school district's needs mean they need to get back in their facility, and so we have to step out of that facility. And we always know that it's going to make another program, another classroom, but we have to then find a new one to remodel and revamp.
So
nature of the beast.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. So your reference then is to exactly what Representative Norton and Representative Melin were talking about, as we have now gone to all-day K, and that need for facilities there. That's more of the reference you were making. Is okay.
Yeah. And again, it's no fault of anyone. It's an opportunity.
Thank you.
And so, following up, then, I have a question of Ms. Dyson. If once we do state bonding with this, they can't be moved out of their space because we've got issues with state bonding money. Ms. Dyson, is that?
Well, Madam Chair and members, yeah, we all kind of perked up at that statement. When state bond funds are used to improve a facility, my guess is that typically there's going to be a grant agreement or a lease management use agreement between the school district that received the funds and the program, the Head Start program, or the nonprofit that's running the program. But the purpose for which the bonds were appropriated to run the program in that facility, I think there might be an issue there because the school district should be then running the program that you were running. It's the program is still
or repay the state.
Or repay the state. So there's some issues that, and maybe it raised a question in our minds.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure that we can say that those that I'm mentioning were bonding projects. So we use Head Start dollars to renovate as well. So.
And we might just do a little bit of follow-up.
And we could always check on that.
Well, thank you very much. I know you all have a conflict, and so we want to get you out of here. And we didn't get you out quite when we promised, but I hope you are still able to make your schedule. Thank you very much. We have no further questions, and appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
And we'll move then to the Library Accessibility and Improvement Grant Program, and we have an overview from the Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Education, Kevin McHenry. And there are a couple of handouts in your packet, members. And then as the example of that, we have people from Perham here, and we'll do a similar overview and then specific. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, Kevin McHenry, I'm Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Education. I appreciate the opportunity to come to your committee and give a brief overview of the Library Accessibility and Improvement Grant Program. Before I get into the presentation, I just wanted to give a few quick stats overall. Throughout the state, there are 360 libraries. 235 of them have been built prior to 1990, which is when the ADA Act was passed. 33 have never been remodeled. 33 have been remodeled prior to 1990. 71 have been remodeled between 1991 and 2000. And there have been 98 remodels since 2001. So it's been a program of great interest. Moving forward, the program was established in 1994, used only to remove architectural barriers from a building or a site. In 2005, the language was expanded to include renovation or expanding an existing building for use as a library or to construct a new library building. And the grants, since the programs have started, have reached across the state to 60 different counties. For the first portion, for the accessibility portion, from 1995 to 2004, 101 grants. There have been 101 grants granted at over $5 million, and they've been awarded to projects in 50 counties across the state. And the grant sizes have ranged dramatically from $614, as you can see, to $262,000. The range of projects that they've done. It's obviously improvements to existing buildings. They've included accessible restrooms and elevators or lifts, so constituents can use the facilities, the power-assisted doors, as well as accessible parking for libraries. Since 2005, there have been 26 grants awarded at $4.9 million, and those have spanned 25 counties throughout the state. The grants have ranged from almost $80,000 to close to $500,000. They've included new accessible buildings, 5 building renovations with accessibility modifications, and 14 of those projects have been focused exclusively on accessibility improvements. Overall, the program has had almost $10 million in state funds. It's come along with a match from locals of just over $70 million, so that's almost a 7-to-1 match on the program. There's been about 112 buildings that have been updated, counting for about 119 projects. One of the questions that we were asked to do was talk about what we're doing to update this program. One of the things we've been doing in state library services overall has been reaching out to our library community and stakeholders, assessing what we're doing well, what we could improve on. And one of the areas we've received some feedback is they'd like us to update the process of how we're doing or how we're administering these accessibility and improvement grants. A few of currently the way the program works is that a library would apply. We do have we consult with a peer review group of experts. The group makes recommendations to the commissioner based on the requirements in the application, and then the commissioner can approve those and move those projects forward. So some of the things we're looking at doing, I think generally we're looking at eliminating redundancy. We want to try to find a way to streamline the application. Overall, we want to create as much transparency in this program as possible. We've heard they want to improve the readability of the application and guidelines. And then we also want to decrease the timeline between when the application is submitted and when the results are and the award is notified or granted. So what we've been doing the last few months, actually we've been doing this for the last year or so, but on this particular project we've been really reaching out to engage the library community. What we've been looking at is taking a look at what the statutory requirements for the grant program. We've been reviewing the guidelines and the application with our grants management team within MDE. We've been consulting stakeholders. We're looking to other agencies and other groups that manage grants for particular recommendations. We've had a conference call and a survey with the library community to really spell out what the barriers to applying are, what we can do to make that easier, and still make sure that we're meeting our requirements that we are expected to make. While this is a process we're hoping to have this finalized within the next couple of months. Again, this is something that we're going to have to reach out to still continue to work with the library community, make sure that the application is something that can be friendly and usable, and overall we want to have it be transparent, not just for what we're doing and what our staff is doing, but we want to have it be as transparent as possible for the legislature and also the constituents of Minnesota. So with that, that's a brief overview of the program and where we're at. I understand that you have had a presentation of some of the background on specific projects from Elaine Keefe already. We did pass along some information for specific projects for her to bring forward to committee. We're happy to provide any further documentation if you'd like to see a breakdown of each project. If you'd like to see a breakdown by county or region, we're happy to provide that as best as we can.
I think people had significant interest in the early childhood centers in the kind of summary, and I don't know, I don't think we'd want you to put a lot of time into it, but if it's already compiled, it might be helpful to distribute that to the committee. I think there was some interest in the early childhood centers about demand, and do you know, is there a way to quantify that for us? What's out there and who's coming to you already?
Sure thing. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking at the recent years of the program from 2008, to 2012, there has been $2.5 million granted in state bonding funds. In 2010, there was no appropriation for the program. There's been a demand, or there's been over $6 million in applications in that time frame. So the demand is high. One of the issues that we did see in this last cycle, without the appropriation in 2010, is that there was kind of a lull in the library community. I think what the issue was is that without the consistent appropriation, I think what we saw was that libraries were uncertain how long the program would be available. As they were timing their projects, it was difficult to count on specific state funds that they didn't know were coming. Since that has been appropriated the last year, we have seen an uptick and several more questions and a lot of interest from the library community.
The committee administrator who keeps track of these kinds of things just informed me that it was that in 2010 it was line item vetoed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Madam Chair. And again, I was going over the overall amount that was put out for grants. That was $2.5 million, and obviously we can only distribute what we've been appropriated.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is an important issue. Certainly, libraries need to be accessible to folks. We did have a request for a former library, I believe, to actually just move the building to make it more accessible. I'm glad you're not proposing to do that. But I just want to take this opportunity to make a comment from a question I made earlier when there was a presentation on libraries. And in case anyone is troubled by not having the answer to this burning question, we had over 60 Carnegie libraries built in Minnesota, and 22 of them are still in operation as Carnegie libraries. Just a historical point for the day.
Representative Detmer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. The library community, you said there's 360 libraries. How are they broken down in terms of county, city? Who owns these libraries in terms of how they're broken down as a community?
Mr. McKinney.
Sure thing. Madam Chair, Representative Detmer, I might turn this over to our state librarian and Director of State Library Services, Jen Nelson, to provide some details.
Ms. Nelson, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and representatives.
You might pull that. I don't know if that mic is.
Thank you. Thank you. There are, as Kevin mentioned, 360 public libraries in Minnesota. Minnesota has a regional library system structure that has libraries operating on both a county and a city basis. I don't have for you the exact number of county-run libraries versus city-run libraries, but there are 6 regions of the state where the regional library system is primarily composed of counties with joint powers agreements with counties to run the libraries. In the other 6 areas of the state, they're a combination of city and county. So I'd certainly be happy to give you that information, the specific breakdown.
Thank you.
There are no further questions. Do you have any concluding comments before we move on to the specific example?
No, we don't have any further comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we'll move on. We don't have a bill, I think, for this one, right? This is just a presentation from the community of Perham, the public library. And they have provided, they did go through the MMB process, and so they have shown you their attachment. And there is also a colored presentation from them. And we have Kelsey Clem and Susan Heuser-Ladwig, city manager and librarian. And Representative Nornes, I didn't know if you wanted to join them up there. Okay. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, Madam Chair, committee members, I'm Kelsey Clem, the city manager. With me is Susan Hauser-Ladwig, and she's the librarian at the Perham Area Public Library. Again, thank you, and good morning. Give us this opportunity to talk about our bonding request for our Perham Area Public Library. In your packet, you should have a pamphlet that has some pictures that will illustrate some of the conditions that we're going to try to explain and the problem that we have at the library and what our proposed solution is. With that, I'm going to let Susan kind of go over it.
Welcome. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Susan Hoyser-Ladwig. I'm the librarian at the Perham Area Public Library in Perham, Minnesota. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our library and kind of some of the challenges that we are facing right now in pertaining to our building situation. Perham is a community of just over 2,500 people, and our library serves actually an extended area. We currently have over 7,000 people who have library cards at our library. We are a member of the Viking Library System. So you may be familiar with Peg Werner. She's the director of the Viking Library System. In 2012, at the end of the year, we were doing some repairs on a wall where we were having some, what we thought, simple mildew issues and airflow issues. We thought we had solved the problem and we were going to clean up the drywall, and which involved removing the drywall. When the drywall was removed, we found out that it was much, much worse than we had ever anticipated, and the entire wall was filled with black mold. And so we did some investigative cutting on our building, and we found out that it was not only that exterior wall or that area of the exterior wall, it was the entire exterior envelope of the building was filled with mold. So we spent 2013 evaluating our options, finding out what the real issue was, why we were having a problem, and what we needed to do about it. What we did was we brought in, over the period of a year, 4 separate engineering firms because we were really hoping to find a better solution. One engineering firm was local, one was from Fargo, North Dakota, and 2 were from the Twin Cities area. What they decided was that when our building was built, we have a stone exterior on our building, and the stone exterior was applied to the building directly against the OSB layer of the wall, and then within that was our insulation and the drywall. And what needed to be done was some sort of a drainage field needed to be included in that wall to allow moisture that would be coming through the stone exterior and the mortar, which is water permeable, but you needed to have an area underneath that stone in order to allow drainage and drying in your walls, and that was not done. And so what happened was water would come through the stone and the mortar, and the materials inside would become saturated, and then it would just, the water would stay there and mold has developed.
And why wouldn't the contractor be liable for that?
Madam Chair, the contractor was following the architect's plans at the time. The building was built in 1996 and 1997. Our architect has agreed that the design of the wall is what is causing our problem, but they feel that their design was a typical design of a stone wall at the time. And some people may have problems with it, and other buildings may not have problems with it. So when we approached our architect with the information that we had from the engineering firms, as I said, they agreed. But when we went to the insurance company for the architect and asked for financial assistance, they refused our claims, saying that we were outside the 10-year statute of limitations for liability and construction issues. We spent some significant time talking with lawyers to see if we had a case to bring liability or a suit against the architect and their insurance company. And over the period of a year investigating this, we were told finally that we could certainly bring a lawsuit against the architect, but that the statute of limitations in this situation is an extremely strong one, and there really isn't a precedence of overturning it in a condition or a situation like ours. And so we could spend a great deal of money on the litigation and really not have a positive outcome. The early estimate of the work to be done on the building is about $514,000. That includes removing the stone exterior of the building, cleaning out the wall cavity, and then rebuilding the wall with a product that will allow drainage in the wall. This product would go along the back of the stone exterior and would allow drainage. And of course, the high price tag comes along with basically taking apart the wall of the building from the outside in. One of the reasons we went to so many engineering firms to ask for help with this was when we were told that we had to have the stone removed from the building. That seemed a very large solution, a large action to be done with our problem. And we finally asked the last two that we approached, can you give us any alternative? Can you look at our situation knowing what the issue is, and can you find a way that we can repair the wall in a less invasive manner? And after their response, we realized that there really isn't any way to change it. All four engineering firms agreed that the solution was to remove the exterior stone. There is no other way to do it. In looking at funding for our project, as I said, we did try and look at litigation and decided that that probably was not going to be a reasonable way to do it. We did look at the library accessibility and construction grants and investigated the option of applying for a grant in that manner. The initial response to our inquiry was that our building is already accessible. It's not an accessibility issue, and so that a grant through that avenue may not be possible. And then that led us to the bonding request.
And to that point, that was the original definition of the grant, but we in fact added, it was 2005, we broadened it, but Ms. Dyson, the point is we didn't broaden it in a way that would have included this. It was improvement to the building?
Madam Chair, as the previous presentation mentioned, in 2005 the program was expanded to include improvements, and the provision says that may apply for a grant up to $1 million or 50%, which is ever is less, of the approved cost of renovating or expanding an existing library building or to construct a new library building. So I guess that would be in part a question to the program administrators why it doesn't fit within what that statute provides.
Is that something you've explored?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think the question is that we're not expanding square footage. You know, we're not taking an old building, making it into a new library, which seems to be kind of the narrow definition of that language. So we're talking about maybe we need to get some language change just to make it clear that, you know, what we're trying to do is abate really a health and safety issue. It certainly seems to be the intent or the spirit of the funding in the law, but we may need to have that clarified.
I don't see any questions, right? Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And could you just tell us, how did you find out that you don't qualify? Do you have documentation from the department, or in what way was that communicated to you, and do you have that formally?
Ms. Ladwig?
Madam Chair, we, in the way the libraries are set up in Minnesota, we tend to do a lot of work through our regional system, which would be Viking Library System for us and Peg Werner. And so it was more of an informal thing. We do not have a written statement or a documented statement. Peg Werner, the initial contact would have gone through Peg Werner. Peg Werner would have contacted the Office of Library Services and discussed with them what the options were, explained our situation, and gotten an idea on how they felt about the program being moved forward and the application being made. And that was done over a period of time in several contacts. And ultimately, the last contact we had was we were told absolutely we could apply for the grant. But at the time, they were thinking still that accessibility was the priority there.
Thank you. Thanks.
Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I noticed the name Arvig in here as the stone exterior provider. Is that from the telecommunications family?
Ms. Ladwig?
Madam Chair, yes. Yes, it is. The Arvig Company, their headquarters is in Perham, Minnesota. And at the time our building was built, the matriarch of the family took an interest in our library and paid for the exterior stone on the building.
Well, Madam Chair, I'm just curious as if that family was still around. They've expanded, grown bigger, and maybe sold their company, but are they available for resources again?
Madam Chair, they are still in our community, yes. And that is one of the things that we look at each other sideways and say, you know, the RVIGs are still in the community, and we do need to approach them as well. But whether they would be as interested in our building at this date as they were at the point in the past, I'm not exactly positive on that at this point.
Thank you.
I see no, who is it? Oh, Representative Carlson.
Yeah, ma'am, just curious, when I was looking through the information here, you said your insurance doesn't cover this kind of a situation. Do insurance policies generally cover that kind of a situation, and you just opted not to purchase the coverage, or what's the history there?
Madam Chair, we have our property insurances through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, and basically, I don't think this would be a normal condition that insurance would cover, because there isn't one specific peril that causes incident to happen. If there was one specific event, some sort of major rain event or wind event, then it would be a covered loss. But since this is really a construction issue, our property insurance doesn't cover it.
Thank you.
I see no further questions, so I think that was a good summary. It sounds as though one of the things we might, again, take a look at is language for making a problem such as this applicable to the program. So a number of things we can take a look at here, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And members, on Thursday, we have two issues. Oh, we're going to hear... we're going to have an informational hearing on a report that's been completed by the DNR on Minnesota School Trust lands. There's a proposal for some bonding relative to that, and then we're asking some questions about a school that was damaged by flooding, and apparently the issue is not resolved there yet. We did not do the minutes. Representative Ward, have you had a chance to look at any changes, corrections? All in favor say aye. Those opposed? Those minutes are approved. And meeting is adjourned.